to the cloud. Awesome. Um, so Nikki, great to have you on the podcast. We've known each
Thanks
other
for having
for
me.
many years now, haven't we, on and off? When we were at PwC together, and then obviously reconnected a couple of years ago to, I guess, yeah, chat and talk about life after PwC, which has been cool. Well, okay, let me think. Totally going to have to clip this one because my brain's just gone really like, what do I say next? Being all serious. So this podcast is about trying to inspire women to find work that works. So talking to people like yourself who are very inspiring and have left the corporate world and gone out on your own. And so I just want to hear from you how that experience has been for you. But I'd quite like to start with a really basic question about career and what is your perception of career? How would you define career, and how did you define your career?
Well, I think that is, first of all, thank you for asking me on. I like always love to speak to people about this kind of stuff. And yeah, I mean, I think that is quite a big question. And it probably is one of these words that everybody has a different definition for. And maybe for me, it's just been career is a sort of a journey where you are able to develop and grow, and you are, you show up or you provide a certain service or put in your skills and talents. And in exchange, you are given the opportunity to A, develop, and B, are given a reward of some sort, whether that's monetary, hopefully some of it's monetary, and some other things too. So I think growth in there is really important for me, but learning is one of my values. So that would kind of make sense.
Yeah, I love that. Growth. That's a good way to think of career, I think. It's just about, yeah, about learning and becoming an evolution of yourself each day, or, looking for things to learn and where to go next.
Yeah. And I think actually it's in the positive psychology world that they have those definitions. So like a job is something that you just show up for. You're like paying your bills, basically. A career is something that you are developing through, that you're trying to improve and get to the next promotion and see that kind of development. And then something that you're passionate about is that like you would do it not necessarily for free, but it's like you're so driven by it. It's like your life's purpose sort of thing.
Yeah, definitely. So like vocations and things like that, this is what I'm living for. So what was your perception of career for yourself when you started out?
Well, I mean, I think this is a big topic. I think if I look back, it was just doing the next thing that you were expected to do. So, it's like you do these subjects at school, then you get these grades, and then you can do these subjects at university. And then after that, these are the kind of things that you do. And so that's sort of where I ended up in the graduate training scheme at PwC. And without really necessarily thinking about what I really wanted to do. And I'm not blaming anybody else, but I've also never been somebody that's thought, oh, like this is absolutely what I want to do in life. I just wanted to learn and grow and have different experiences. And actually what that career provided me at that time was, I wanted to learn more because I love learning. And so doing professional qualifications seemed like the right thing to do. And I think things have actually moved on so much since we started out in our careers too. Whereas now we're having all these conversations about values and your strengths and what you're really good at. And back then there was still an element of just get a good job. And it was maybe kind of a little bit like fear and scarcity, kind of like driven of like a job is like survival and you just do that. But now we have, I guess, the benefit and the gift that we can be a bit more thoughtful of where we apply ourselves and the things that we want to do.
Yeah. And you mentioned values a couple of times. Would you say that your values have changed at all, particularly when it comes to your career and how you approach your career, or have they been fairly similar the whole way through?
I think they've been fairly similar. And actually, it's one of those annoying exercises. Like I remember at one point when I was at PwC, I was doing this exercise. It's the first values exercise I'd ever done. And one of the guys that I worked with, who was in my kind of training group, I didn't actually work with him, he was in my exam kind of cohort. He looks at my values and went, "Why are you working here?" And I was like, "Oh, okay." And I did the same exercise the following year as a facilitator, because it was one of these, like, make your experience. Now you've got your qualification. Let's think about where else you might want to work in the firm. So I did it the following year. And then, I was in this kind of starting to get into this paralysis analysis of exploring what else I might want to do. And then I did it for the third time at an Escape the City event, probably in around about 2010. And I remembered like being really close to tears, because people kept on getting me to do this exercise. And I was like, what is the point in this?
Yeah.
And I couldn't make that connection. And I felt by that point quite helpless, actually, which was pretty hard.
Yeah. So how did you manage that? What did you do with that feeling? I love the phrase you used, paralysis analysis.
Paralysis analysis, yeah. So, like, I think there's been a number of stages that I've taken in my change, and so I was at PwC like you for a long time. Like I was there 9 or 10 years, but I tried what I thought was the hardest that I could to try and find something else when I was there. It wasn't that there were times where I absolutely loved my job, and there were things that I loved about it, but there were times when I just thought, maybe there's something else. So I went on secondments. I was seconded to Lehman Brothers. I came on secondment to the Global Development Team, which is where we met. Yeah. And I asked literally everybody about what they did and what their department did and what could I do. But the trouble was that it just sent me into this spiral of, and now what I talk to people about is like obstacle thought. So it's like, oh, I could do that. No, obstacle thoughts that comes in, you can't do that. So you go, okay, I could do this thing. No, can't do that. And before you know it, you're in this kind of spiral and not making any progress forward. So I got really like quite depressed, really. And as things are, that has led to a lot of the work that I do now, which is talking about resilience and like just pushing on through, because I was so, I had this feeling of being like indispensable. And even though that I was like pretty in this like burnout zone, I was still attached to my BlackBerry, sending messages and showing up for calls when I was on holiday in the UK, all these mad things that were not good for me. And I didn't listen to my body, which was giving me what I explained to people as like the amber light saying, slow down, kept on going. And then I got a stop sign and got signed off work for a couple of weeks. Fortunately, only a couple of weeks, but a couple of weeks is too much in any standard, because that should not be happening. And that wasn't, I don't blame the people that I was working for, because I was the one that was participating in those behaviors. And look, this goes back to, all of the things that you've learned and the experiences that you've had in your life, what have you. But that was not helpful to me at that time. So I tried all these things, and then I went back to my home team, and I just sort of like, I guess, coasted, because I was just so disillusioned and lost. And I then did an interior design course, which sounds quite mad. I was working in tax at the time, which I absolutely loved. And I went on down to part-time hours so I could do this course. One of the partners who I worked for was so supportive, which was, a great benefit of being at PwC. And I absolutely loved it. And it reconnected me with this kind of creative side. And I never would have described myself as being creative. But I enjoyed it so much. However, I didn't at that time. I was stuck in quite a lot of fear about that wasn't really the right thing that I wanted to do. And so in the end, I made the decision to leave, because I'd kind of, as far as I could see, I'd tried to go on secondments, a couple of secondments. I'd asked all these questions. I'd done this course, and I was I would never have told anybody to resign without a job to go to, but I couldn't see any other way of moving forward. And so that's what I did.
That's a brave step. How did you get yourself ready to make that move?
I knew when our like summer bonuses were being paid, and so I knew that was happening, and then that was what I did. And I think, to be honest, I just needed some time out. And ironically, you know, when I'd been on that secondment to the global development team, a director I worked for had said to me, "Oh, Nikki, I think you need to take a career break. Have you ever considered it?" And I thought, that's absolutely preposterous. I don't take breaks. Like, I'm hardworking. Like, my identity was so like tied up in that. And then fast forward another 6 months, and I was phoning another director to tell them that I wouldn't be coming into work because I'd been signed off, which I felt a lot of shame and embarrassment, and like I was letting people down, you know, none of which is like valid or true, but that's how I felt. And so I left without really a plan. But then by that point, I knew that I was already in conversation by that point with another couple of opportunities. One, you know, in another like financial institution, that was kind of like offered to me, but then a contract didn't transpire. And so that kind of went on a few months. And by that point, I'd spent my savings. And so I ended up at Deloitte doing the same thing. So this was the next step in my journey, which I think if you haven't worked in the Big Four, you think, oh, well, that's just the same thing. But it wasn't the same thing at all. It's like completely different to go from somewhere where you've worked for such a long time, 9 years, to go somewhere else, and the culture is completely different way of working. You don't have your network. You have to really, it was a completely different experience. So that was quite a big step.
And how long did you stay at Deloitte?
I was actually only there for 9 months. So you know, as I said, it was really challenging. It was rewarding too. And in the 6 months I was there, I was promoted. But this kind of opportunity came across my desk, as it were, to go and speak to a client of an ex-colleague from PwC. And so I went to speak to them, and actually that turned into a job interview, and I was offered the job. And I thought, well, I've done this for 9 months. This is still not the right thing. It's a lot better than before, because the change and the sort of like after plateauing for such a long time and then had this upward acceleration. But I thought, well, I'll try working in-house. And so I went to work in-house at this data-driven investment management company. So different from working in a really huge organization, because it was really agile. Like the example I give to people is that, you know, in the Big Four, if there was like a desk move or a shift of departments, you know about it like 4 months in advance, and there'd be like emails go out and there's plans, and then the boxes arrive a week before and you all pack it up. And so not long into this job, I was sitting in the HR office, because although I was sitting, you know, I sat within HR, even though I was doing tax role. And the COO and the operations guy came into the office, and everybody from HR was out at a different meeting. And they went, right, we're having a desk move. And I was like, oh, great. When's it happening? Now, get up. And I was like, what? They're like, yeah, get up, we're moving. So, you know, and that's a very silly example, but that's how quickly things changed and happened. And so I really enjoyed that. And I really enjoyed the commerciality of it, because it wasn't just like chucking advice over a fence. And I say that, you know, that wasn't quite like that at the Big Four, but it was actually really implementing things and understanding what worked and what didn't work. And I also learned from that is that there's so much pressure on you, and this probably is a lot internal pressure to get things absolutely right and get your advice right. But being on the other side of things, I learned that the advice that I got from people was a lot of times not correct. And so it made me feel much more confident in myself and my ability, because I'd always been so like, I guess, perfectionist about things. So yeah, so I was at Deloitte for about 9 months, 10 months, and then I was at this other place for, I think, just over 2 years, I think. Yeah.
So across all of those jobs, because I know what you're doing now, and it's none of those is something completely different. So throughout that period of time, from making that really big move to leave PwC, to leave the salaried role, to just have a go and then find yourself, I guess, job hopping a little bit to try and work out what you're doing, what were you feeling throughout that time?
Well, it wasn't like I had a grand plan. I was just trying to try out different things. And I think that I was searching for more meaning in what I was doing. So there were things, aspects that I got satisfied, but there were other things that didn't. And so I was searching for more meaning. And given my experience before, I'd sort of told myself, well, I'm not going to just leave without a job to go to again, because I ended up in a similar situation. I need to think things through more. But then I had this holiday in Italy that I had such a good time. And I just had this epiphany when I got back on a Monday morning and decided that I was going to leave. So yeah, I think it was a searching for more meaning was the kind of overarching thing. And without realizing it, my exploration, I mean, probably started around 2008, which was around the time I did my secondment to Lehman. I think that was a financial crisis time. So yeah, so I kind of since then been doing all of the stuff. So even unconsciously, and since from the point I did the secondment to global development, where I worked with a external production company, and so I saw a different way of working there as well, and thought, wow, their offices are so cool and like creative. And even the people in that department that I worked with worked a bit more like, I think I spoke to Catherine, who you know as well, about this. And I remember early on going to a meeting with her, and we went to the National Portrait Gallery. And my jaw was kind of like on the floor. And she was like, what? And she and Maria were like, what's wrong? And have you never been out of the office to a meeting before? And I said, well, no, not unless I was going to a bank or something. So it was just all of these things were just different introductions to different ways of working. And I became really interested in psychology and really interested in well-being, both through my own experience, and I was very interested in yoga. And so all these things sort of just organically, it was like a snowball rolling down a hill, gathering more snow on it, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's a wonderful thing, isn't it? And I think even Steve Jobs, for example, takes everything that he'd experienced, his calligraphy course, I think he did, that built into how he designs all his products and the beauty of it. And I think that's what I failed to kind of recognize all of my past experiences as something valid, but it's something that I'm trying to do more of now, to think about, the lived experiences that we have, and what we pick up from every role we do, all the different teams that we've worked at in these different companies, the different people we've been inspired by, all the different things that we've learned that we then can take into whatever we choose to do next. It's all like, I love that snowball effect, isn't it? You're collecting skills and experiences as you're going along on your journey.
It can be so easy to think that as well. And I was so stuck for a long time because I just didn't know what else I could do. And you can't see anything else because this is the thing that you've trained for so long. Mm-hmm. And literally, when I speak to a lot of people, and I definitely related to this, it's like you're going to get your CV and light it on fire and everything's going to like go up in smoke. When of course that isn't how it is at all, because everything that you have learned and experienced up until this point is valuable. You're just going to use it in a different way. And it's trying to think about, it's almost like, I talk to people about, you're trying to see that thing up there, but it's so out of reach because you're trying to think about their role, their job. But actually, if you just take it down to like, what's the next step? What's the next thing I need to do? Then it can take away a lot of that overwhelm and pressure from trying to work everything out, basically.
Definitely. I think one of the phrases that saved me, I think, when I was in the same situation as you. I think I was planning my exit from PwC for about 8 years, trying to work out where to go, different teams, tried all of that, and then eventually, okay, now it's time. I think what saved me was the phrase, follow a compass, not a map. And it's that whole, just keep following things that feel right and keep taking micro steps towards that north, and things will start to change because you'll be taking yourself in the right direction, even if you don't know what that end goal is or what's at that north point. But just it's about identifying the things that really mean something to you, whatever that meaningful work is. I think you said about meaningful work earlier. That's such a pivotal part of well-being, is meaningful work, or well-being at work, meaningful work. And so just, yeah, trying to get more involved in the things that you enjoy, getting some side projects, talking to people, things like that, just helping you find that north point and see if it becomes any more clear where you want to go, where that path's going to take you.
Yeah, 100%. And I've seen you talk about that before, and it's such a great analogy because, you know, I've never been a map person. I've never had a map. I've always been a follow the breadcrumbs, or like think about that compass. And, you know, I think if you do that, you can't really go wrong. You're like following your nose. I think the challenge for a lot of people and a lot of my clients is that you can become so disconnected from actually what you do really want because you followed the kind of mainstream. And this isn't a criticism, by the way, it's just that we all kind of follow this, do this, go to university, get this job. And then it's like, oh, actually, this isn't what it was kind of made out to be. But what do I actually want? Because there's not been an exploration of what I actually want. It's just doing all the things that you needed to do to get there. And so there can be quite a disconnect with knowing who you really are, I think, because especially in these big organizations, you and I certainly did, you kind of merge into being that organization. One of you know, a friend of mine used to say it was like I had Stockholm syndrome, because people like, why don't you just leave? And I'd be like, because I love the brand and I love all that stuff. It's like, he's like, but you were miserable. Yeah, and you know, there was lots of great things about working at PwC, and lots of great people and lots of great things. But yeah, recognizing like how to connect with the things that really like light you up. And maybe if more people were able to do that, then they'd be in the right roles in these organizations.
Yeah, I also think it's okay to recognize that you're not the right fit for where you are, or that you're no longer, or not that you're not the right fit, but that you and this organization or whatever it is that you are doing are maybe not the right fit anymore. And recognizing that is, I think, the first step to saying, actually, do you know what, this probably isn't the right place for me anymore. But then it becomes that scary, well, what the hell do I do then? Where do I go? What, and how do I even start to explore who I am now? Like you say, what's my identity? For me, that's the really exciting point in a person's journey, is that they've realized that this isn't working anymore. They're not just sitting there thinking, well, I'm just miserable and I don't know what to do. And they're actually saying, I've worked this out, this isn't right. And that's where I love the values exercises and things, because I do find that people have, if they've been in a career, it's because they've maybe valued something, like the workplace, the way of life, maybe it's the money, something like that, that something's changing, or their life is changing in a certain way. So maybe something is a bit misaligned, and having someone to coach you through that change and identify, you know, how you're changing and what you now want out of life, and then how to go on that explorative journey of rediscovering yourself. I just think that's really exciting. But it's, I think the reality of that situation is also, it takes time. And
yeah, it's not
that's
like
no.
Yeah,
And I
see Marie, she's going to write everything. Here you go. This is what you're going to do.
Exactly. This is me now, and this is what I'm going to do. And I think that's actually, people who are looking to change jobs and change careers, that's the real hard reality.
Yeah.
it's not just a, well, I'm going to walk out of this and step into this. It's that I've got a real journey ahead of me to work out what's my next step, where am I heading to, and then being brave enough to start taking some steps in a different direction. And
Yeah,
it's
and I think
yeah,
the other thing is that there oftentimes are a lot of ways that we can explore those things within a big organization like that
yeah,
and get other experiences that are going to help us on our way. So it's like, well, how can I make the most of my time here? And you can use your values that way and think about, well, how do I get more of this where I am now? How do I like play to my strengths? And what might help me in a next step in leaving this situation.
yeah. So what did you do then when you um well, what you do now is you're a life coach. How do you describe yourself?
Well, I mean, life coach, executive coach,
Mm,
transformational coach. uh, I My niche is that I help high achieving women escape career overwhelm and reconnect with their passion for work. But that can be so like multifaceted because it can be
mhm,
you're feeling unfulfilled and burned out. It can be like amplifying your career where you are, because sometimes there are lots of like thoughts that get in our way of that our experience. Um, and also that our behavior and how that isn't supporting ourselves and we can't see that, things like visibility, all those kind of things. And then also helping people that work in their own business who maybe feel overwhelmed or who, yeah, they need perspective and it's lonely working for yourself. And then the other half of what I do is around well-being, and so presenting to groups on topics like resilience and stress awareness, um, positive psychology, and all of that kind of stuff, and helping people with tools and strategies to feel better in their work and in their life, basically.
yeah.
So the combination of the two things, and they're kind of intertwined.
And how did you make that step from being in a corporate world to into your coaching world?
Well, first of all, I didn't have a grand plan. I actually, so after I'd made this decision to leave, because I think it's that I heard somebody say recently, it's that you have the euphoria of like leaving or escaping a situation that you don't want to be in anymore, but you also have the fear at the same time. And so everybody was saying to me, oh, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? Why are you giving up your really good job and this really great salary? And so I was like, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And I had a meeting with this guy who we'd brought back from the States. So I used to work in global mobility. And I thought, you know what, this is always what I've loved, just helping people, mentoring people. And I remember back to when I'd worked in global development, and I'd then thought maybe I could be a coach one day. And I thought, yeah, I could be a coach. That's what I could do. And so people kept on asking me, and I kept on just saying, I'm going to be a coach. And so it became a self-fulfilling prophecy, really, because I then thought, right, well, I'm going to go and go do a coaching diploma now. And I did that. But I didn't ever think, oh, I'm going to set up my business and I want to, do X, Y, and Z. I literally was just following the breadcrumbs, and I was interested. I'd been doing yoga teacher training, and I was really interested in like psychology. So I did some courses in positive psychology and resilience and mindfulness. Um, and then I did a lot of like upskilling in terms of learning about marketing and copywriting and speaking and all of these other things that you need to do when you work for yourself. So it just all sort of like gradually, again, it's like the snowball. It just kept on going, really. And that's how I got to where I am today.
Mm, amazing. And what were the biggest challenges that you've had to overcome in this journey?
I'd say starting out fear,
Mm,
because yeah, like I didn't know what I was going to do. And so not getting completely swept away with that, by that fear, and moving through it by just like keeping on going. That has definitely been a challenge. It's also been a challenge working by myself, because I am a people person and I love being with people. And particularly, during the pandemic, well, not actually the pandemic itself, because I wasn't by myself, but yeah, being living, working alone has been very challenging for me. But I've learned so much from it, like all of it. It's one of those cheesy things that you hear people say, starting your own business is the biggest personal development journey you'll ever go on. And if somebody had said that to me, I would be like, well, yeah, whatever. But it's so true. Like because you can't hide from anything. You have to be visible all the time. You have to get over all of your own BS, like limiting thoughts about things. And you've got nobody blowing smoke up your ass, like telling you you're really good at something. It's just you, and you have to do all these things. And so it's a constant and evolving journey of growth, I would say. And I was completely naive to that. I didn't know that when I started out.
Yeah, it's a big thing. There's no underestimating it, is there? I mean, I'm dipping my toe into both at the moment, where life's been a bit busy, and we bought a house which we weren't expecting to do, and I left PwC. I've had to dip my toe back into contracting. So it's interesting what you said about the different cultures in different organizations, because I'm at a big bank and it's very different. It's very different.
In what way has that been different for you?
Well, I think it's like you were saying, I've gone in, it's a global role again, and I'm remote working from home. I'm working through Citrix, which is just painful anyway, and don't know anyone. I don't know, other than the people I'm being introduced to. You feel quite isolated. And I never really thought about that at PwC, because I had such a massive network. But going into another big corporate and just not knowing where that network is, how do you connect with people? It's a very different experience. But what I love about the contracting is that I can walk away and it's 3 days a week and it's brilliant. So it's a good sort of hybrid, or what's the term, like portfolio way of working. Working on my own business, but also knowing that I'm having to do something else to bring in the cash at the moment. It's actually quite nice. It's a nice way to kind of keep things going on both sides.
So you get your freedom, but you also get your security from having that.
Yeah, so it's interesting. So if you were to offer some advice to other women out there who are maybe feeling a bit stuck or a bit unsure about where to go next, what would you say?
Take the next step, whatever that is. Because when this is a really it's like tough, that sort of like medicine, if you like, is that we can be stuck, but we're kind of like, we play a part in that stuckness. And I know, like, I've been there. It's so hard. But just keep taking little steps. Whatever those might be. Like, you might be at a stage where you need to do some more research and analysis and start like looking at things that pique your curiosity. And it might be like doing a course sometimes, even if it's got nothing to do with what you think you might want to do. It just accesses like a different part of your brain. You meet different people. I mean, I've been the number of people I've met on my journey, as it were, entrepreneurs who I'm so inspired by. There are people doing so many different things, and it just opens your eyes to possibility and gets you out of that sort of tunnel vision of like, this is the only thing that I can do. Like, if you're in any of these like places, these big organizations, it's highly likely you're a smart person. You could do anything you wanted to if you put your mind to it. It's just a case of like taking that step in that direction.
And I love that you brought in networking, which is one of my favorites, just being out there talking to people. So even if your next step is just talking to more people
Yeah.
about what they do and getting that inspiration, talking to people about what you're interested in, finding something different to be interested in,
Yeah.
can really, like you say, help you open your mind to new opportunities and experiences.
Yeah, so those steps, they don't have to be big steps. They can be like small steps. It can be like just, networking. And that could be where you are as well. It could be, they don't have to be really scary and huge steps. You don't have to walk off the edge of a cliff.
Mhm.
You can take really small steps that don't feel quite scary.
Yeah. I think that trying to break things like this down into small manageable steps is it's just so much easier on your mind, being able to process what you're doing. And actually, by the time, for example, by the time I got around to handing my notice in, it was just exciting. I just couldn't
Yeah.
wait to do it. I was counting down the days to write this letter, because I was ready. I'd taken all of those steps. I knew this was the right time. Still scary, but it was, exciting.
I had a countdown calendar at PwC too. I
Did you?
crossed some days. Yeah. And then I actually resigned with a poem as well, which is quite weird. But we
You
had
resigned with a poem.
the poem. It wasn't completely weird because the head of our department at the time had sent out a newsletter every week, and he'd sent out this email a couple of weeks before, and it was it's called The Risk by William. I can't remember the guy's name, but it's basically about taking risks. And so I was like, you put this poem in your newsletter, and this is kind of like what I'd like to say about the situation now.
I love it. What a great way to finish. You have to send me that poem, please. I want to have a read.
Yeah, I will. I will do for sure.
Awesome.
And on the step front, there's actually a quote that I sometimes post on my social feeds. I think it's actually Martin Luther King, or maybe it's just been attributed to him. But the quote is something like, "You don't need to you don't need to see the whole staircase. Just take the next step."
Mm.
Um, and I think that kind of, you know, goes along with the things that we've been talking about.
Yeah, that's a nice way of putting it as well. Just take the first step. You don't need to see all the way to the top.
Mhm.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you, Nikki. This has been awesome to catch up with you in general and hearing about your story. I'm sure this is going to inspire lots of women who are feeling in that tough spot. Hopefully, help them take that next brave step, whatever that is going to be.
Yeah, well, I hope so.
Cool. Thank you very much. I'm going
Thank
to stop the
you.
recording. There we go. I was about to